Hello, and welcome to Spirit Decoded. This episode is episode 6 on acceptance. If you want to read along with me as far as what it is that I'm quoting, you can go to our Facebook page at Ethos Communing, and you're looking for the post Morning Moment with Spirit from 9/26/2021. There you'll find this posting, and this was a series of channel teachings from Spirit. This is the 6th episode, breaking down their words to an understandable form so that we can actually understand and grasp the lessons that they were giving. Let's begin. And I quote, "The point we've been making to you in these lessons, child of God, is to begin to see your mind differently, to perceive the potential that is there within to cultivate right thought to something constructive and useful. Spirit words, regardless of how you define it as spirit, angelic, alien, or a host of other terms, cannot save you, cannot change you, and cannot heal you. It cannot stop you from being what you are or what you intend to do." End quote. So there's the first paragraph. And right off the bat, they're clarifying the point of what it is that they're talking to us about and what they want us to really understand. And the point that they've been making here is for us to be able to see or begin to see our mind differently. And that's the important point here. We don't have to grasp the lesson fully. It'd be nice if we did, but not all of us are ready to do that. So for many of us, it's going to be able to go ahead and grasp part of the lesson. But one of the main points that they want you to understand and grasp is to realize that your mind is not what you think it is, that it has more options than you currently think it has, to approach it differently, to start realizing you may not know what it is, and start asking questions. Then what is it and how does it work? If that's all you get out of these lessons, that's going to be a major turning point for any person, because it leaves you open to possibilities and actually examining your mind instead of thinking you already know what's there and not even considering it. Now, the next sentence, to perceive the potential that is there within and to cultivate right thought to something constructive and useful. So they're saying that, in short, we don't see our full potential of our mind. And our thoughts is not something constructive and useful to us, which that's hard to grasp when we look at ourselves, because that's kind of sounds insulting. Did you just basically call me an idiot? Kind of sounds like it. But it's really not about being smart or stupid. It's about having it be constructive and useful, which is beginning to understand tools that are laid out before us, which is our mind. But before we can actually get there, the first step is actually realizing we may not know what is actually there, and we may not understand its actual purpose. And if we can at least be open to possibilities with that, that would be a windfall out of this entire series so far. And that's why Spirit for this section opened with that. And one of the most important points that Spirit is making here, because we love to put responsibility of our mind elsewhere. We put our divine retribution in other beings' hands. And Spirit says that clearly when I say Spirit's words, regardless of how you define it as spirit, angelic, alien, or a host of other terms, cannot save you, cannot change you, cannot heal you, and cannot heal you. And this is the important part what they say, and they explain why. It cannot stop you from being what you are or what you intend to do. Now, the one thing that we know in this world is that there have been people here that have intended horrible things. Horrible things. And no one stopped them from doing that from the divine side. Eventually, physically, they were stopped here. Yes. And it was a combination of wills to get together to actually stop them. But the thing of it is that if someone intends to do something, they're going to try to do it. And in our own experience, breaking that down into something that we palatable, that we can actually understand, there have been people in our lives that we have intended to stop them from actions that we see as harming themselves. And no matter how we tried, they did it anyway. We couldn't stop their will. We can offer to reflect change and truth to them and see if they're willing to change. We could force them our will upon them and get a temporary reprieve of whatever it is that they intended to do. But the moment that we stop applying that pressure, they went right back to what they were doing anyway. And the easy way to look at that is, how many relationships have we been in where we've tried this technique to make the relationship work? And at the end of it, who was the one that had to accept, I have to accept this as it is and let this go? That would be us. That was the one that was us going ahead and submitting the will. And if you ever had someone submit their will against you, then you also will know that at the end of the day, what did you do? What you intended to do anyway. It wasn't until you realized it was wrong for you that a change occurred. So it's important in understanding when Spirit says that they don't have these powers to save us, change us, or heal us. They're putting responsibility right where it belongs, which is, what do you want to do about this? It's your mind. You created this. What do you want to do? Let's go into the next paragraph. And I quote, "To assume that it can is to assume that one angle of light is more powerful than God's will. God fully intended free will, which means no one can unwill or uncreate yours. If God will not unwill you, then no will can. Beware any will that teaches or suggests it has this power, because this is yet another illusion to snare your mind, capture your attention, demand your power, and feeds off your angle of the light, because, like you, it has not realized the source of its own light." End quote. Now, this is a confrontational but powerful paragraph. And I say confrontational because we have certain set beliefs on the way what we call divinity works. There is a very specific reason why, when it came down to Spirit, when Spirit was talking about their words in the last paragraph, they use such terms as spirit, angelic, alien, or a host of other terms. Because they're taking a paintbrush here and painting a wide stroke on what we call a higher power, divinity, a clearer will, a better, clear intelligence, whatever we want to call it. At the end of the day, we're literally submitting our will to it because we think it's better than ours. And Spirit is now specifically confronting that. And hear clearly what they're saying here. To assume that it can, which is that divinity, whatever you want to call it, higher will, clear intelligence, supreme intelligence, energy of life, whatever, to assume that it can is to assume that one angle of light is more powerful than God's will. And they're saying here that when God created, it created equally. There's no such thing as creating better than another. You're creating in this exact moment. Look at the world around you. What are you experiencing about it right now? You are creating that. And based on that, in that space, you can create miracles, or you can create destruction, or you could be numb. There's no limit. Where do you want to go with it? There are those that have taken that and created the most amazing things in this world. And then there are those who have had lives where they've done nothing with it. But either way, whatever you want to create with it, it's open to you. There's no such thing as one more powerful than another. Any miracles that was done on this planet, you can do as well. Because that space that was created was given to all. Because we're being something right now. We exist. It's not bound by the limitations that we place on it based on what we've learned from this world. It has nothing to do with being human. That's a falsehood. You were being before humans was a concept. You're still being now. You will still be when you lose that vehicle or your body. Because you are not that vehicle. So then what are you being without the vehicle? You're being closer to what God created. You're always being something. It never ends. But you do have control over it. And that's what Spirit's saying here, is that we need, as beings, not as human beings, as beings, we need to get over the idea that one angle of light is better than another. And what's my proof for saying such a bold statement? That we look at it as other angles of light having more power than ours. Well, we do that at work. Management's better than us. We do that with our neighbors. You know, the Smiths down the block, how they have everything together, the yacht, and go on vacations all the time when we're struggling to make do. Those people, we continually look at others and measure ourselves. And if we didn't, then would jealousy be one of the 7 deadly sins? It's there for a reason. We compare because we believe a foundational belief of being in this world is that one will is better than another. And we walk into a room, we measure ourselves instantly to try to establish a pecking order on who's in a room, who's a threat by trying to be better, and who's less than us that's not a threat. And we feel comfortable around those that we deem as less than us, uncomfortable when we encounter someone that we think is superior to us. Then we get intimidated. Then we get jealous. And then we try to take them down. That's human nature. But that's what those limited beliefs get you. But you are not that vehicle. So when you release the vehicle, you're still being something. So is the limited beliefs real? Well, if you can release the body and not have those to work with and still being something, then what would happen if you realize that here while in the body? And that's the invite here. And that's the premise. What happens if you realize those truths while in the body? There have been those who have accomplished such feats. And they've changed things wherever they've gone. Because we knew they were different. And there's plenty of situations where if they became too troublesome, well, we got rid of them. We killed them to get them out of the group mind. And if we couldn't do that, that wasn't going to be an option. Then we revered them to make them better than us. Those are our two options. We kill them, or revere them after, or we revere them now, and we make them better than us. And we think of all the people that are out there that are on the path going ahead and showing the truth now. Even like taking a look at Eckhart Tolle. And he's calmly saying the nature of the mind as he sees it from the reflection of his own. And we say, oh, that's great truth. But I'll never see it the way he does. He's an advanced entity. He's amazing. Isn't he great? Oh, his teachings, it's phenomenal. So are you. That's the point of his teachings. So are you. And the invite here is to get past the idea that one angle of light is more powerful. Because God didn't create things more powerful than others. It gave equally. And that's what Spirit keeps trying to tell us. Now, watch how they continue with this. God fully intended free will, which means no will can unwill or uncreate yours. And this goes into the whole power structure. And I'll dive right into it and take the daring dive in. The commonplace thing today is all the talk of the archangels. Not just angels, archangels. Let's talk about the archangels. Having a message from an angel, that's not enough. That's not impressive. Having arc in front of it, well, now we're talking. That's impressive. So everyone's going to start having messages from archangels. Because, again, angels is not enough. We need something more powerful to make it more presentable, to make it more holy. They cannot unwill anything you have willed. Let me repeat that. They cannot unwill anything that you have willed. They cannot. Neither can I, neither can your neighbor, neither can your sister, neither can your mom. No one can. There is not a being that can unwill what you willed. The Buddha cannot unwill what you willed. Jesus cannot unwill what you willed. Muhammad cannot unwill what you willed. Shiva cannot unwill what you willed. None of them can. Now, watch how Spirit goes in to explain this. They say, if God will not unwill you, then no will can. And understand the power of that statement. To assume that a will can unwill what you willed means that they're breaking God's law. So their will is more powerful than God's? Or did God lay down the law? Because God is the law. That's what we exist in. That's the point. It is the universe around us. It is what we breathe. It's what we live in. No matter where we go, we are in it. Because it is. And we are. So, if free will is there, and that's the way it works, it's built into the universe, it's built into the way things are, then how is someone else, anything else, going to unwill what you will? Now, their light may be clearer than yours as far as in perception of what they perceive it to be. Certainly. But divine power? No. No more divine than yours. Because the same light. That's the point. It's the same light. Spirit continues, says, beware any will that teaches or suggests it has this power, because this is yet another illusion to snare your mind, capture your attention, demand your power, and feeds off your angle of the light, because like you, it has not realized the source of its own light. So what is Spirit really saying here? So let's go back to the other paragraph. Or a host of other terms cannot save you, cannot change you, and cannot heal you. It cannot stop you from being what you are or what you intend to do. Now, they also say, this is yet another illusion to snare your mind, capture your attention, demand your power, and feed off your angle of light, because like you, it has not realized the source of its own light. So what they're saying here in these two paragraphs is that if something comes along and tells you, I can take this pain from you, I can remove this from you, just let it go. We will heal you. We will make you whole. We will change you. All you have to do is A, let it go. B, pay a price. C, do this healing. No, no, no. Nothing can unwill what you have willed. Now, what it can do, because Spirit is specifically saying it's yet another illusion to snare your mind, capture your attention, demand your power, and then feed off your angle of the light. So here I am, and I use the words, I can take this from you. Just let it go. What am I asking you to do? I'm asking you to place your attention on me in prayer. I am asking you to focus on me. So, okay, I'm physical. So I'm the channel. Let's just put this to Spirit. I can take this from you. I can heal you. Just let it go. Call me in prayer. Which, by the way, Spirit never tells me. But let's just say they did. So I sit down, I focus my energy, my attention is firmly upon the being that I call Spirit. Now, I may not know exactly what they are, but whatever it is, I'm trying to attempt to contact it because I think I know, so I'm going to go ahead and focus on their energy. And whoop, they slip in. Hi, we're here. And I feel divinity. Or so I think. Because I'm not divinity. They're divinity. And with their presence, I am in awe. Out comes the angel singing. So there I am in prayer. I'm focusing all my attention on will upon them. And where you place your attention is your power to create. This is the gift God gave you. This is the gift God gave every being. Where you place your attention is your power to create. Your will is in motion, and your mind is tapped into the mind that God created, and you're creating. So you're channeling that energy, and my attention is firmly fixed upon another. And oh, you're so great, oh, divine presence, take this from me, please take this pain, blah, 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 blah. And while you're doing this, whatever that being is going, and I'm absorbing your light. Because you're giving it to me willingly. Willingly. Because your attention's upon me, and you're giving me your energy. And I'm absorbing it. Because I have you believed, I have you tricked, that because your attention is upon me, and I demand your power, which you don't realize you're giving me, I get to feed off your angle of light. And why would I need to do that? Because I've not realized the source of my own light, which is inside of me. And how do I do that? Well, I'm going to promise to save you, change you, or heal you. All you have to do is, and there's that comma, all you have to do is, and now we put it together. All you have to do is place your attention upon me. My presence, my divine presence will take care of all that for you. If you just let it go. You don't need to let anything go to anyone or anything. There is no one here that needs to represent God. God does not need a representative, darling. You are in God. Period. So when someone says they're representing God, for what? Why would you need a representative? A reminder? Certainly. A representative? No, God does not need a representative. You represent yourself with God always. And that's the reminder. Watch how Spirit goes into this to say what the real point is. In the next paragraph, Spirit says, the only power our voice has for you is a reminder. So here Spirit goes right into it. They're not here to heal you. They're not here to, well, how do they put it here? They're not here to heal you. They're not here to save you. They're not here to change you. They say the only power of their voice is to remind you. Remind you of what? Good question. And Spirit goes on and says, not to believe in us as above you. And I apologize. I didn't read this paragraph. My apologies. Let me go back and read the paragraph before I go into it. And I quote, the power our voice has for you is a reminder not to believe in us as above you. Never bow your head in the presence of the divine. Look up into its eyes and see yourself, for that is its only message to you. We all share the same glory that God created. To be taught otherwise and to teach that you are less than that is blasphemy. So now going into the sentences, the Spirit goes and says, not to believe in us as above you. So Spirit makes clear they're not higher than us. They're not better than us. They're not more divine than us. We are not filled with sin. And this is the whole point of eternity. How do you work in the idea of eternity, which is energy that constantly cycles back and forth? Picture the eternity symbol, swooping back and forth, feeding off each other, creating harmony. Constantly back and forth. At what point during that process is anything greater or less than anything? The point of eternity is that it's equal. It's a balanced equation. There's no point that's better than another. It harmonizes. It flows one into another, creating harmony. It is harmony. And Spirit's saying our minds, as God created it, that's its foundation. That's still its state of being. Why? Because we exist. We exist. If we weren't within that harmony, we wouldn't exist. Are we currently being something? Are you currently being something? Yeah. Then you exist. Is it dependent on that form? If you've had a past life experience or seen others with it, you know that it doesn't. The form has nothing to do with it. You continue to be. You're always being something. And that's the point when you start understanding the power of the mind. Because you get to have a say in that. But the point that they're making here is that there's no point of it where one is greater than another. You can be what you want. And let's take this out of the esoteric rafters and make it simple. Something that we can grasp and we can understand. Let's look back to when we were younger. What did we think about ourselves spiritually and physically and where we were in the world? And where are we today? Are we clearer with that vision? Are we clearer with the light that we are? How about in our teenage years? Were we totally confused? Wrapped in angst and pain? We look at ourselves today for what we are, and then look at ourselves then, and it's a world of difference. We would believe, looking at it from the eyes of ourselves as a child, that where we are today, that's above us. That's definitely more spiritual authority, more light, more understanding. And all those statements may be true, But what is not true is the feeling that goes along with it of that it's greater than us, because it was us. The only difference between us as a younger person and now is experience, is clarity of perception. So if you were to clarify your perception to the point of spirit, would you see as they see? Would you experience a state of being that they experience? They say yes. But that is the question for us living in this body, isn't it? Is that true? Is that possible? Is that worth taking a gamble on to try? And that's personal. You have to answer that question. No one can answer that for you. And no one can give that to you. And no one is going to make it happen if you just let it go. Because to assume if you just let it go, we'll take it from you, means that you needed them in order to release it. You don't. You don't. Any more than we needed that lover that we couldn't get rid of. We were addicted to them. Like, oh my God, there we were, knocking on the door, back in bed with them again. One more time, and we knew this wasn't going to work the last 5 times, and we're going to regret this. But we did it again. But somehow, whether it's a lover, whether it's a habit, whether it was that cigarette, whether it was a drug, whether it was the alcohol, whatever that was for us, something we eventually let go of. And it was gone. Did you need to go to some place where there was a divine being in order to let it go? No, you did that. You let it go. And there may have been the encouragement, there may have been this, there may have been that, all these different people, places, and things to support you in that path. Absolutely. But did we need something divine to pull it from us because we were willing to let it go? No, it's your mind. Once you were ready to let it go, you let it go. And your mind changed. And while you may have had brothers and sisters from physical or non-physical there witnessing your mind give birth to a clearer perception of yourself, none of them there was essential in order for that to happen. The only thing that was essential was for you to change your own will and realize you could at any time. And how many times do we say statements such as this when we go through a change in life? Oh God, if only I'd realized that in a younger age, I could have given this up so easily and not wasted so much time on this. Because it was easy to give it up once I realized I could. Once I realized I could. No divinity necessary to pull that out of you. No divinity healed you. Nor could it. It can't unwill what you will. Only you can do that. So what is the purpose of divinity? Because it's talked about, so what's its purpose? What's its intent? How does it work with us? Spirit is explaining that. That's the point of this paragraph. And they say, never bow your head in the presence of the divine. And I'll continue to include the next sentence. Look up into its eyes and see for yourself and see yourself, for that is its only message to you. That's all divinity can do, is remind you what God created. It's its only power. Why? Because it remembers itself. It knows what God created because it knows itself. What else would I have to teach? What else would I sell? Water filters? Monopoly games? If I have realized the truth of God, I have seen what God created in me when it originally breathed life into my essence. So what else would I have to teach? I would mirror that to you. I would show you the truth of you because that's all I know. Because that's what's keeping me in eternity. Because that's the point of eternity. It emanates that. So when you are in the presence of the divine, you don't bow your head, look it in the eyes, because it has a message. You're going to see yourself. It's only a message to you because that is what you are. That's the only thing you'll see is yourself. They say to seek God is to go insane. You have to be ready to see yourself. It's not a good thing to see yourself when you're not ready to accept the truth. We don't like our illusions being messed with. And we've said this before in the previous episode, when someone threatens our truth in a certain way and we're not ready for it, we've killed in this world for that. We went to war for that. Ultimately, when you look at it, that's what it was all about. In some way or somehow, we felt threatened over an image that we believed real. And so, okay, we'll eliminate you if that's what it takes. But we're going to keep our image. And off to war we go. So you have to be ready for it. But you don't bow your head at their feet. Look it in the eye. Because it's only going to show you yourself. That's its message. And why? Spirit says we all share the same glory that God created. And this is important. It's one of the strongest things I've seen, again, from experience as a channel. I was amazed at the strength in which they structured this sentence when it came through. It said to be taught otherwise and to teach that you are less than that is blasphemy. That's not usual for Spirit to use such a strong word, and to mirror it after things that, to be honest, churches have used. And there's a point in them particularly using that language in that tone, that demeanor, and for its strength. And the overall message here is a shock to humanity to wake it up, to realize new time, new lessons, new understanding. They're going to deal with the truth of what we are and start putting the cards on the table versus being polite about it and throwing hints and being gentle. It's time for a more direct conversation, not to in any formal way overpower our will or, but they're just not going to play cutesy with us anymore. They're going to tell the truth and you deal with it as you choose to. You want to listen, you don't want to listen. Who wants to listen? And apparently, people are waking up now that it's time to listen. Not everyone, but you know who you are out there, because I'm sure that caught your attention. It did me. So to be taught otherwise and to teach that you are less than that is blasphemy. So Spirit is saying that your power to create, which is your state of being, again, regardless of what's happening in the world around you, whatever it is that you're experiencing in that moment from it, that is your state of being. That is what you're choosing to be in reaction to whatever's happening around you. First step is realizing that. Second step is taking your power back. Third step is realizing there's another state of mind you can tap into that you didn't create, but you are. And you realize that's what you've been searching for endlessly, life after life here. And you take your attention off of the world because it's not your mind, and you bring it inside because that's where your state of being actually belongs. That's its cause, that's its effect, not the world around you. Now, once you get to that state and you're in that space, that's when you can begin to understand that you're not less than anything else around you, and nor is anything else less than you. If you go to the descriptions of anyone that has reached that state of consciousness, they don't believe, nor preach, nor dictate others being less than them, or anyone else being greater than them. There's a reason why they always preach, we are all one. And they may say it in different tones and demeanors, but we are all one. And there's a point why they always reach that same conclusion. It's because they have tapped into eternity. And different philosophies may have different words for it. Just because Spirit uses the word eternity doesn't make it a valid word or a proper description for it. Because again, no words here on this planet can properly describe what was there in existence before the word existed. The word doesn't properly capture it, but it does communicate with us an idea. So while other religions, philosophies, spiritualities will use different words for it, it's of no coincidence that they keep describing the same thing. It's a state of being. And it's one that we did not create. It's one that we accept. And part of that, in balancing everything out, to be able to harmonize with that energy, is to begin to understand and mature spiritually and grow up. Grow up. Yes, I said it. One of the most powerful things I heard Spirit say in a meeting, they were describing in a channel session us as a spiritual being. And they said one of the main hindrances for humanity's spirituality and being able to accept and grow beyond where it has grown to and remains trapped is accepting that spiritually it is on the same level as explorers when they believed the world was flat. Ouch. We need to spiritually grow up. We're not getting it. There is so much more to explore and so much more to see. But the first thing is to accept our minds and accept the power that we've been given with it. The ability to be, the ability to create with it. And that it's not dependent. It has nothing to do with the world around us. And once we do, we get rid of the power structure of one being greater than another. Because our source is coming from within versus without. And that's why the power structure is needed, is because in the outside world, there is no eternity. And there is no divinity. We talk about it, but we certainly don't act that way. Our society reflects that. In mass. Not individually. In mass. And it's hard to argue that point when you look at the effects. Not the talk. The effects. And the way we're currently living our life. It doesn't match our talk, does it? Not in my eyes. And I don't need spirit or spirituality to teach me that. That's just being intellectual, opening your eyes and perceiving what you see. Let's go into the next paragraph. Spirit says, and I quote, "The point to understand with this truth is that the main focus is not that this type of belief goes against God's will. That is only part of the truth. To grasp it fully for the healing of your mind to occur is to grasp that this goes against your will because you are God's will. When you can stand in the light with this truth, then you can understand the angle of light that you are because you'll be perceiving what God created consciously." End quote. So, all right. Now they go into the fact of less than, greater than. In the last paragraph, they ended and called it blasphemy. Why would it be blasphemy? Because it goes against what God created. It's an attempt to undo God's will by creating a case system that doesn't exist. Whatever it is you're being, nothing can undo that. Whatever you want to be and create, nothing can stop you from your intention. Whatever it is you want to do with that state of being does not require any of the being's permission or approval. That's not how we live physically. We don't believe that. But that's what Spirit is teaching us. And whether we believe it or don't believe it, when you observe your life and you look at what you're doing and how it's worked, you're going to see it's exactly what's actually happening. And you don't need to have a spiritual experience to be able to observe this. Again, no fancy guru is needed. You don't need me. You don't need Spirit's words. You don't need a retreat center with a special teacher. And you don't need a healing to have your chakras aligned or your DNA sequenced to be able to see this. It's already happening in your life now. It's already happening. And as we've said, when it came down to it, what stopped you from your addiction? Who was able to remove that for you? Whether it was a person, place, or thing. We've all had that one thing that we've been powerless over. Who stopped you from wanting that? Who came and removed it from you? No one. It wasn't until you realized you don't need it. It wasn't until your mind was ready. It wasn't until you were tired of being that way and you chose to be something else. And off you went. And people often claim there was a divine presence or a sense of oneness or a sense of this. And I can totally understand why you would see, oh, divinity was present. Yes, your mind was present. You aligned. You aligned. And you saw what God created. Because in order for it to come through, it had to come through your angle of the light. Which means it came through what? Your mind. And that goes into what they're saying with the next paragraph. To understand that this truth is that the main focus of it is not that this type of belief goes against God's will. So to go ahead and say that, the belief of being less than, things more powerful than you needing divinity, however you want to look at it, it's not that it goes against God's will. That is only part of the truth, because it does. It's not the way God created it. But that's not the main offense. You can't stop it because it offends God. You're not getting it. If that's where you stop and you try to correct based on just that alone, then you're not getting it. There's another part of it. And Spirit is saying, to grasp it fully for the healing of your mind to occur is to grasp that this goes against your will because you are God's will. And this goes back to what I was just saying. In that moment where you've had that release and you let it go and there was that moment of peace, that connectedness, that feeling of whole, of being able to see all of it at once and finally understand and realize I don't have to do this anymore. And you feel the release and you know that it's changed and never again did the wind blow so cold. And we've all had some type of an experience into this. That feeling, that connectedness, that came through your angle of light. And you're going to say, that was God's will. Yes, most certainly. Because it was correcting a perception. But it came through your mind. If it wasn't coming through your mind, it could not have happened. And what was happening was not God's will, it was a correction of your will. You were aligning your will with your mind, which is how you connect to God. That's the point of what was created. It's what connects you into the state of I am. It is your connection and grounding point into eternity. So it is not just against God's will. To grasp it fully is the understanding. It also goes against your will because you are God's will. And until you grasp that, you cannot heal because you don't know what you're healing from. It's the mistaken belief that you're something else besides God's will. That there's something else in creation. There's nothing else in creation. That's what makes eternity. As long as you believe there is something else in creation, then you're not connecting with it because you're perceiving something different. And that's the point of the oneness. The oneness is being connected to what God created. And in order to do that, you have to realize that's what I am. And hear what I said. I am. What doesn't matter. I am. Whatever that is, I am. It's a state of being. And one that is not dependent on person, place, or thing. Who, what, where, why, when. It is not bound by those conditions like our planet is. And in fact, none of those conditions have anything to do with that state of being. And none of those conditions, here's the big one, stop you from that state of being right now. None of them stop you from that state of being right now. It is happening right now as you hear these words. And you can tap into it right now. And none of those what ifs can stop you. It is up to you. It is your state of being. And to give your power of that state of being to what you consider divinity, because it says, I can remove this from you, just pray to me. You need me. No, you need to accept what God created. And until you do, you cannot, go back to what Spirit said last lesson, you cannot understand divinity. You cannot connect to it. It cannot work through you. Because in order to do so, it must come through your mind. Not as you perceive it, as God created it. Because that's what exists in eternity. That's what God created. Not what we're choosing to. It is what is. And until you accept that and see that light, how can divinity work through you? Let's continue. Spirit says, When you can stand in the light with this truth, then you can understand the angle of light that you are, because you're perceiving what God created consciously. And there it is in English, but understanding that is something completely different. And this comes into the point of when they talk about enlightenment, the person is standing in that light with that truth. They understand their angle of light because they're perceiving it as God created it consciously. It's not subconsciously. It doesn't rise on occasion and we connect and we have that moment of awe, and then it fades when we remember we forgot to take the laundry out of the dryer. And we're back to our world of what ifs. Who, what, where, why, and when. And that's what's bothering me. That's what's affecting me. If the rest of the world can just get their crap in order, my life would be a piece of heaven. But unfortunately, it's all built on free will, and no one can stop you from the way that you're perceiving it. Well, you can. You always could. But first, you have to take your power back. You have to own, or begin to own, the angle of light that you are, and start perceiving what God created consciously. It's a choice. It's maturing. It's spiritually growing up. And stop believing in the falsehoods that we've been taught. Next paragraph, and I quote, "This will not be understood until you accept the light you hold. Until then, it becomes a philosophical interest. Until you do, we will continue to remind you and reflect the truth of who and what you are, so you may remember once more and join us in completeness. It is time for a new way and new lessons for those ready in the group mind of humanity. It is time to discover what lays within and the freedom from pain that comes with it. It is time to understand your mind, but first, you must perceive what you have your attention upon currently." End quote. And that's the final paragraph for section 6. And they end it, in my eyes, a very powerful way. There is no have-tos, there's no shoulds. So, and I've said this statement before, and let me say it again. It doesn't mean anything if you don't pick up these tools. Nothing's going to be hurt. You don't have to. This is not a divine thing where we need light workers and you have to activate now because it's needed. No, you don't have to do anything. Nothing can make you do anything you don't want to. And if you don't want to, you're not going to do this. You'll put on a good parade. You'll talk the talk. You'll act as if. And it'll look good when we get together to talk about it. But at the end of the day, get ready for your next life, because we didn't change anything here. We're not really emanating the light because we haven't accepted that it's within us. How could you emanate something without your mind being present? And how could your mind be present until you had a denial that it's not? Until what you're holding and the way you're perceiving now is perceived that I don't want this state of being. Spirit puts it clearly. It's a philosophical interest. And that's okay. It could be a philosophical interest for the next 15 lives. We will always find a way to be. If we destroy this planet, we'll build another. We'll find another way to come to a vehicle. We will find a way to be physically. Because that's what we know, that's what we want. Spirit has told me we destroyed our planet 7 times so far. This will be the 8th. It doesn't matter. Because we have eternity on our side. We'll do it all again. We may want to stop and think about the consequence of having to rebuild to the refinement that we have now and the luxuries and the convenience we have to be spiritual. The science, the medical, everything lined up to add the spiritual to it, to make it really work and hum in a harmonious way and explore a state of being while being physical. Be dream come true. But first we have to wake up. First we have to grow up. And first we have to realize there's more to us than we believe. And it's not going to come in throwing yourself into the lessons of spirit. It's not going to come to you from throwing yourself into the lessons of the archangels or the aliens or, the fairies or whatever it is that you want to call it. It's going to come from you stopping the way you're living your life now and stop being in denial that you're in pain, that you don't like your state of being, and stop applying toxic positivity patches to it to make it more bearable. Stop bearing it. That's the point. Stop bearing it and look at your state of being and decide, I can't be this anymore. And be brave enough to not know what you want to be, what you're going to be, and just state you don't want to be it anymore, because it leaves your mind in the most powerful position, open to the possibilities. Because then something can finally happen. Then something can finally change. It's the maturing of our group mind that's been waiting to occur, but doesn't have to. It can remain a philosophical interest. And until it becomes more than that, they're going to continue coming through beings like me that can communicate and understand the energy and be able to verbalize it and ground it into this world. I am not the only one. I'm a dime a dozen. I am a dime a dozen. And there'll be plenty more where I came from. And we will be here to reflect the truth. Whether it's through using the voices of the archangels, spirit, the jinn, whatever. It doesn't matter. But you don't need your DNA resequenced. You don't need your chakras aligned. You don't need to be healed. You don't need the truth of this yoga. You don't need that guru. It all stems from you being brave enough to finally look within. Everything you need is already there. You already have everything you need because God already gave it to you. And no matter how much you have confused your mind away from that light, your computer reset button is one step away. One step away. And until then, they're going to continue to reflect that truth of who and what you are so that you can remember and join us in completeness, is what they said. Which means you already have a place in eternity. It's not a matter of earning it. It's not a matter of anything having to be given to you. It's already been given. Spirit makes it simple. Remember once more. Remember once more. Everything you have, you already need. Everything you need, you already have. Apologies. And the time for us as a group mind, the opportunity that we could say no to, we can say no to. We've done it before. We'll do it again. But the opportunity, according to Spirit, is that it's time to discover what lays within and the freedom from the pain that comes with it. It is time to understand your mind, but first, you must perceive what you have your attention upon currently. And after all of that expansive information, we go back to square one, which is where we started from with the whole thing of his acceptance, is being able to perceive the way we currently create our lives now, which is that we don't know what our mind is, and we think this world dictates our mind and our options of what we can be. If people annoy us, we get annoyed. If people love us, we have gratitude. If people are loving towards us, we love them back. If people are spiteful towards us, we're spiteful back. Everything is a reaction to who, what, where, why, and when. And until you realize that has nothing to do with what God created, it has nothing to do with your mind, until you get rid of your obsession off of your thoughts and emotions as the source of the who, what, where, why, and when, to constantly defining that as your purpose of being, you can't understand what a state of being is and the power you have to create it. Because you're too busy giving the power God gave you away by keeping your attention on the thoughts and emotions versus your state of being and what you want it to be. Thank you for joining us for episode 6. Appreciate you listening with us. And again, please visit us on Ethos Communing on Facebook. Give our page a like so this way you'll be notified when we release new channel sections, because there's going to be more. And then also like and subscribe for Spirit Decoded. This way you can be notified when we get new information as far as videos to break down the information. It'll go hand in hand. And of course, as always, please leave us a comment.